Alright, so we are starting the second part of the introduction to the 39 Melachot. Yesterday we started the first part, in which we began discussing the concept of 39 Melachot, how we know that the idea of 30 Melachot exists. And we spoke about how there's a pasuk in the very beginning, Pashat Vayakel, where it says Ela Hadvarim, and we saw based on the gematria and the little other wordplay, the 39 Melachot were found based on the pasukim itself. So today we're going to continue, and we're going to describe an interesting machloka that happens in the Gemara in Daf Ayin Amud Aleph in the second Shabbat, and it's based on the pasuk of the Torah. The Torah says the following: after describing the chiyuv of keeping Shabbos in Pashat Vayakel in the very beginning of that parsha, immediately after it says the following: Lo tivaru esh b'chol moshavotechem b'yom HaShabbat. It says you should not kindle a flame, ignite a flame in all of your dwelling places on the day of Shabbat. The question is as follows: immediately before that, the Torah tells us you can't do any of the melachot. Okay, I understand. Don't do the melachot, and whatever the melachot might be, good enough. I'll read the Mishnah, I'll know what the melachot are. However, why does it need to tell me dafka, don't light a flame? I mean, you're going to start listing the melachot, list all 39 of them. If you don't want to listen, don't list any of them. Why dafka talking about any individual one? So, in order to appreciate this, we have to look at a Rashi. And Rashi says that the reason that this is singled out is a subject to a machoket Tanaim in the Gemara itself. And he says the following: Yesh me Rabbeinu omrim. There are those of our rabbis that say the following: the reason why it singles out a single melacha from all the 39 melachot is for the following reason: Lelav yatzat. It comes to teach us the law of alav. We're going to see what that means. And the other opinion says lechalek yatzat. The other opinion says it comes to distinguish. What is this referring to? So the Gemara in Daf Ayin Amud Aleph says two opinions on this matter. There's the opinion of Rabbi Yossi, and there's the opinion of Rabbi Natan. We're going to write that down over here. Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Natan. Rabbi Yossi says the following: if you look at the Melachot at Shabbat, we know the punishment that comes along with it. That if a person were to violate it.
But this learning is for the merit.
Before we continue, the learning is in the merit of that's it. And we have to first understand the following idea. When a person violates Shabbat, there's obviously repercussions that come along with it, whether it was done intentionally or not intentionally. Person who willingly violates Shabbat, knowing that it's an isur with all the consequences along with it. So it could be he's chayv skila, it could be chayv karet. Or if he did it unintentionally, he didn't know it was Shabbat, or if he didn't know that the malacha was asur, he's going to be chayv chatat. He has to bring a korban to the Beit HaMikdash as to make amends. However, according to one opinion, and this is the opinion of Rabbi Yossi, he says there's only one melacha in which, even if you violate it intentionally, there's no karet, there's no skila, nothing happens. And even if you did it unintentionally, you wouldn't have to bring a korban either. Which law is this? It's the melacha of kindling the flame, turning on the fire, according to Rabbi Yossi's opinion. And that's the reason why it is specifically that melacha that's listed out. Because to say the following: all the melachot, all 38 of them, if you do them, there's some really bad repercussions along. That one, however, you get malkut, at most, but you're not going to be sent to the gallows, essentially. That's the opinion of Rabbi Yossi, which says lelav yatzat, meaning it's only a lav. It's only something that you really shouldn't do, but it's not the worst thing out there. Lelav yatzat. So it comes to teach us ilav, and it's so deraita, but doesn't come with a chiyuv skila or karet. According to the second opinion, this is the opinion of Rabbi Natan. It says lechalek yatzat, and this becomes much more interesting. We should know, by the way, that the opinion that we're going to follow is Rabbi Natan's opinion, not Rabbi Yossi. We don't assume halachically that if a person violates the melacha of turning a light on or kindling a flame, that he's off the hook from skila karet. That's still part of the deal. We don't assume this to be halachically valid. But Rabbi Natan says the following: that if a person were to violate, let's say, every melacha on Shabbat. Let's say he violated every melacha, but the reason he violated them was because he didn't do it intentionally, but he did it unintentionally. He didn't know it was forbidden. Let's say the following: he started taking scissors and he gave himself, or he gave somebody else a haircut. Then he started drawing and painting, and he started doing any other melachot. Question is, at this point, he violated Shabbat, but how many korbanot does he need to bring once he figures out that it was asur to do so? Does he need to bring one because we have a general umbrella of not bringing Shabbat, or is each melacha considered categorically different? Right, so it's each melacha, and that's what his point. He's saying lechalek yatsa, that each melacha is separate, it's distinguishable one from another, and if a person were to, within one single Shabbat, violate multiple melachot unintentionally, he would have to bring multiple korbanot corresponding to the number of melachot he's performed. So, for that reason, he says, the reason that we talk about dafka, the melacha of kindling a flame, is to show that just as this is distinguishable on its own, so too every other melacha is distinguishable on its own. You have to be bringing a korban for that as well. So that's the opinion of Rabbi Natan. So he says lechalek yatsa, which means that it comes to distinguish one melacha from the other. So based on this, we have to ask the question: what exactly is the pshat of Rabbi Natan when he's saying that each one has its own identity? How does that exactly work? So there's machloket rishonim on this, and based on this machloket, there's also some sort of nafkamina. We'll see exactly how viable this nafkamina is, but it goes as follows. The Tosfot Reed tells us the following. Tosfot Reed says that each melacha the person performs, whether he's going to be doing hotzai, staying to Rishut Arabim, or he's doing borer, or he's planting, or he's digging a hole in the ground. Each melacha is like a different lav completely. He compares it to the following. He says each melacha is like a completely different isur. As much as you have different isurim when it comes to chelev, you're not allowed to eat the forbidden fats, or blood, or whatever other isur you want to talk about, each one is distinct on its own. So too, even though there's a general category of chilul Shabbat, there are 39 types of isurim in chilul Shabbat, and each one has its own facet. So when you have one umbrella, they really have different lavin, different isurim completely one from the other. So one really has nothing to do with the other. That's the opinion of the Tosfot Reed, that they have different forbidden nature along with them. That's his opinion. Rashi, however, holds completely different. He says, no, that's not what it is. And he compares it to a very interesting case. In order to appreciate this case, we have to talk about the following. Let's say a person violates a given melacha on Shabbat. I don't know, give me a melacha on Shabbat, you can't do. Cutting. Okay, so let's say Reuven did not know you're not allowed to cut on Shabbat. So he starts cutting. Then he stops cutting. He still didn't learn you're not allowed to cut, and he cuts again. So he cut in the morning, he cut in the afternoon, and he cut towards the end of the day. He cut 3 times in the span of Shabbat. Now, at no point did he know it's asur. Now, how many times does he have to bring a korban for these acts of cutting? Does he bring for each individual one, or does he have to bring one for the whole thing, for the specific act of cutting?
One.
One. Why? Why is it only have to bring one?
One lapse of awareness.
Okay, so we have something called the halama, which means that there's something known as a lapse of awareness. Meaning that since the person did not know at any point during that Shabbat that melacha of cutting is asur, therefore, it's as if he only did one action, and therefore he only brings one korban. But let's say Reuven cut in the morning, someone told him that it's forbidden to do it, he understood that, then somehow he forgot again, whatever, I don't know, he fell on his head, got amnesia, and he did it again. Okay? So now you have a different situation. Now you have a situation in which between those two actions, there was a yidiyah, there was an understanding, and there was knowledge of the forbidden nature of it. According to that, in that situation, you have to bring multiple. You already have to start bringing 2 or 3, depending upon how many times he relearned the law. The reason is because each lapse of awareness is going to separate from one isur to another isur. But how about the following situation? Let's say a person, multiple times he goes with a nidah. Let's say he didn't know his wife is a nidah, and he goes with her once, twice, 3 times. Now, in that situation, he didn't know, let's say he didn't know she was a nidah, or he didn't know that nidah is asur. how many times would he have to bring a korban for that?
Each time?
One. Again, the same thing. Because since he only did one isur, which was going with an nidah woman, in one lapse of awareness, therefore he only has to bring one. The same thing as Shabbat, like we said regarding cutting. Now here's another case. Let's say a person went with multiple nidot women, and he never knew it's asur to do so. Let's say he went with 3 women. Each one was a nidah, and he never knew it was asur to do so. How many korbanot does he have to bring? You say 1? Anyone want to argue? What do you want to say? Well, there are 3 women over here. 3. Okay, so Samson says 1, you say 3. The answer is he has 3. The reason is because gufot mechalukot, different bodies is considered to have different facets of the same isur. That's the idea. More than that, even more fascinating. You could look at the Aruch HaShulchan. The Aruch HaShulchan says the following. Let's say a person would go with his own wife. She was in nidah. He didn't know she was in nidah. He went with her. Then she told herself, and then again he went 2 weeks later again. She became nidah. Went with her again. He still didn't know it was a sur. So between the interim, there was a tvila in between. The Aruch HaShulchan says that that's considered 2 isurim because it's considered like a new body. She went into the mikdash, became like a new entity, as it were. It's a fascinating idea. So from this, what we find is that multiple bodies, even though it's the same isur, will cause a person to be transgressing multiple types. Based on this, Rashi says in the following chidush that when a person violates multiple melachot and Shabbat, it's not that there's different lavs. Oh, there's a lav of not burning, there's a lav of extinguishing, there's a lav of taking out. No. There's one lav of Hotzat Shabbat, but there's different facets of them. There's different categories of them. But they're all under the general umbrella term. So whereas the Tosafot Reed says that they're completely different isurim, Rashi says, no, it's the isur of Chilul Shabbat. However, what's the difference? There's just a different facet of each one of them. Just as there's different bodies when it comes to the case of Nidar or whatever other isur arayot there might be, so too, Shabbat has different facets. The question is, what would be the practical ramification between these 2 things? Now, Menachem Zemba, Alav Shalom, says the following idea. He says something that's very questionable how this might work. He says the following distinction is possible. According to the Tosafot Reed, who says that each lav is an isur on its own, let's say you see a person, he's going to go violate Shabbat. I don't know, he wants to turn on the car. He wants to turn on his car, right? So he's going to be violating the isur of turning on a flame, let's say. Okay. Now you go up to him and you tell him, you're not allowed to do that because you're into somebody else. And you have to give him a proper warning. And you tell him, the reason you can't do that is because you're violating the isur of kindling a flame, right? Havara. Let's say I didn't tell him that was the case, but I told him you're violating the isur of chilul Shabbat, meaning the more general term. According to the Tosafot Reed, the guy would not be chayv because you did not give him a proper warning. Since it's a separate isur, you have to specifically state which isur it is. You can't just say it's the Bechal Shabbat. You got to tell me it's the Chilul Shabbat because of Havara, because of kindling a flame. Or you see a person about to do borer, something simple like that. You got to tell him it has to be borer. You're doing borer. You can't tell him you're just violating Shabbos. It's not sufficient. According to the Tosafot Reed, who holds each one's a separate law. According to Rashi, however, Rav Menachem Zemba wants to say the following: that since each melacha has a different facet, but it's all under the general term of Chilul Shabbat, you don't need to tell him which melacha he's doing. All you need to tell him, you're violating Shabbat. Because it's just a different facet of each one under the general umbrella term Chilul Shabbat. That's the practical ramification he brings. Is there a problem with this? Yes, because Rashi himself says in a few places, also it's brought down in Chat Chinuch, that Rashi holds that on Shabbat itself, you got to tell the specific malacha. Even Rashi holds that. So this whole distinction that he brings is quite questionable. Right? It's a very nice idea, but he himself writes this, by the way. It's not like somebody else found it and argued. He says, my own pirush is quite questionable how this might work. But there's obviously more study that needs to be involved in order to understand it. But it's a very nice idea, and B'ezrat Hashem, we should be zocher to actually be mechaber to his words and to the data of Rashi as well. Baruch Na'olam, amen v'amen.